In the shadow of the North Mountains, where ancient pines whisper secrets of power and pain, Lyra's hands trembled with a healer's determination. Cast out for daring to mend those deemed unworthy, she had learned that compassion was both her greatest strength and her heaviest burden. They brought her to him in chains, the feared Alpha Valen, whose golden eyes held a wilderness no one had tamed, whose wounds glowed with poison no pack healer dared touch. Death circled him like a patient predator, while his council watched from the shadows, waiting for weakness to claim their ruthless king. "You will heal him or die trying," they told her, as if there were a difference. What they didn't understand was that Lyra had spent a lifetime touching broken things that others feared. Her grandmother's voice still echoed in her mind. "Healing is not just about mending flesh, child, but seeing the soul beneath the scars." As she approached the Alpha's bedside, the air grew heavy with power and possibility. His golden eyes found hers, feverish, furious, and strangely vulnerable. In that moment, something ancient stirred between them, something neither expected nor sought. By morning, when the poison had retreated and the Alpha declared her Luna before his stunned council, Lyra realized she had done more than save a life. She had stepped into a dangerous dance of power, politics, and unexpected connection that would either heal two broken souls or destroy them both. For in a world where strength meant survival, Lyra's compassion made her both savior and target, and the deadliest battles would be fought not with claws, but with the heart. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. Lyra's fingers trembled as she gathered herbs in the dim morning light. The forest floor was damp beneath her knees, mist clinging to the undergrowth like reluctant ghosts. She worked swiftly, methodically, the way her grandmother had taught her, the way that had gotten her cast out 3 moons ago. "You heal what should die," Elder Thorn had declared before the assembled pack. "Rogues and strays, animals with no loyalty. Your compassion makes you weak." A bitter smile crossed her lips as she picked a sprig of feverfew. Compassion was not weakness. It had kept her alive these past months, trading healing for shelter among the scattered settlements that dotted the forest edges, far enough from pack territories to be safe, close enough to civilization to survive. The snap of a twig jerked her attention upward. 3 wolves emerged from the tree line, their postures rigid with purpose. Not rogues. Their movements were too coordinated, too disciplined. Pack wolves. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly rose to her feet. "Healer," the lead wolf called, a tall man with silver streaking his dark beard. "You are summoned." Lyra clutched her basket tighter. "I belong to no pack. No Alpha commands me." The 3 exchanged glances, something like pity crossing their faces. "Alpha Valen requires a healer," the woman to his right said. "It is not a request." Ice flooded Lyra's veins. Alpha Valen, the shadow of the North Mountains, the wolf whose name mothers whispered to frighten disobedient pups, the leader whose territory had expanded 3-fold in 5 years, whose enemies disappeared without trace, whose own pack members spoke his name with reverent fear. "There must be other healers," Lyra protested. "Better healers. Pack healers." "They've tried," the 3rd wolf said, his voice low. "He killed the last one who approached him." Lyra's mouth went dry. "And yet you bring me to him?" "He's dying," the bearded wolf said simply. "And when he dies, the packs to the south will descend upon us like vultures. Thousands will perish in the fighting. Perhaps you don't serve a pack healer, but surely you don't wish for such bloodshed." Clever. Appeal to her compassion, the very thing that had seen her exiled. Lyra studied their faces, finding no deception there, only desperation. "I'll need my supplies," she said finally. They brought her to the fortress as night fell. Carved into the very mountainside, the massive structure loomed against the darkening sky, torchlight gleaming from narrow windows. Guards lined the approach, their eyes tracking Lyra with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "The council is divided on bringing you," the female wolf, Kira, Lyra had learned, explained as they climbed the stone steps. "Some believe only pack should tend pack, yet here I am." The Alpha's second overruled them. Dominic believes Valen would rather die by an outsider's hands than appear weak before his own. A roar echoed from within the fortress, followed by a crash. Lyra flinched, her steps faltering. "He's been like this for 2 days," the bearded wolf, Elias, said grimly. ambushed at the southern border. The wounds wouldn't be fatal for an ordinary wolf, but there was something on the blades. Poison, we think. And none of your pack healers could identify it? Lyra asked, following them through towering wooden doors. As I said, Elias replied. None got close enough to try. The interior of the fortress was surprisingly warm. Its stone walls hung with tapestries depicting hunting scenes and ancient battles. Pack members watched their procession with wary eyes, conversations falling silent as they passed. Another crash echoed down the corridor, followed by snarling that raised the hair on Lyra's arms. They approached a set of double doors guarded by two enormous wolves, their expressions grim. He's thrown everyone out twice, one of the guards said. Even Dominic. He has no choice this time, Elias replied, pushing the doors open. The Alpha's chambers were in ruins. Furniture lay splintered across the floor. Tapestries hung in shreds, and deep gouges scarred the stone walls. The scent of blood, rage, and something sickeningly sweet permeated the air. And there, in the center of the destruction, stood Alpha Valen. He was magnificent, even in his deteriorating state, tall and broad-shouldered, with skin like burnished copper, and hair as black as a moonless night. Blood stained his bare chest, seeping from wounds that glowed with an unnatural purple light. His eyes, when they fixed on Lyra, were molten gold and filled with fury. "What?" he growled, the single word reverberating through her bones. "Is this?" "A healer, Alpha," Elias said, his head bowed. "For your wounds." Valen's lip curled, revealing teeth too sharp for his human form. "I ordered no healer. You need one," Lyra said before she could stop herself. The room went deathly silent. Elias and Kira froze beside her, their sense spiking with fear. Slowly, deliberately, Valen turned his full attention to her. "You address me, outsider?" His voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more terrifying. Lyra swallowed hard but held his gaze. "I do. You're dying." A low, menacing laugh rumbled from his chest. "Many have wished that. None have succeeded." "This isn't about success or failure," Lyra replied, taking a cautious step forward. "This is about poison. Northern bitterroot, if I'm not mistaken. The sweetness in the air, the purple glow. These are the signs. Without treatment, you have perhaps a day before your heart stops." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she could identify the poison so quickly. "And you believe you can heal what packs trained in my service could not?" Lyra set her basket down and began removing her supplies. "I believe I can try." "Approach, then," he said, spreading his arms. "Prove your worth or join the others who have failed me." The threat hung in the air between them. Lyra glanced at Elias, whose minute shake of the head confirmed what failed truly meant. With deliberate movements, she crossed the room until she stood before the Alpha. Up close, his presence was overwhelming, power and rage and pain radiating from him in palpable waves. The poison had spread further than she'd initially thought, purple veins extending from the wound across his torso. "I need to touch you," she said softly. His nostrils flared. "You smell of the southern territories. I've traveled widely these past months. Since being cast out," he observed, his gaze piercing. "I know the scent of exile, little healer." Lyra's hand stilled for a moment. "Then we understand each other. Neither of us belongs fully to the old ways." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "I am the old ways, the most ancient law of our kind. Strength, power, dominance. And yet," Lyra said, reaching for her mortar and pestle, "here you stand, felled not by strength but by a plant that grows beneath the snow." She expected rage. Instead, a surprised bark of laughter escaped him. "You have courage, outsider. We shall see if you have skill to match." As she worked, grinding herbs and preparing poultices, she felt his eyes tracking her every movement. The wound was deep, the poison well advanced. Northern bitterroot was rare and deadly, traditionally used by the mountain packs for mercy killings. Someone had wanted to ensure Valen's death. "This will hurt," she warned as she applied the first poultice. He didn't flinch, though she knew the burning sensation must be excruciating. "The council believes I should have taken a mate years ago," he said unexpectedly as she worked, "that a Luna would have softened my edges." Lyra kept her expression neutral. "And why haven't you?" His smile was all predator. "I have no interest in being softened." She worked through the night, applying poultices, brewing teas of counteractive herbs, chanting the old healing songs her grandmother had taught her. The poison fought her at every turn, but gradually, the purple glow began to recede. Dawn was breaking when the doors burst open, revealing a tall man with auburn hair and a scarred face. Dominic, the Alpha's second, she presumed. Behind him trailed 8 others, the Council, their expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility. "Alpha," Dominic began, then stopped short at the sight before him. Valen sat on the edge of his bed, bare-chested but no longer bleeding. The purple glow had faded to a dull shimmer, and though he was pale, his eyes were clear. "The Council wishes to speak with you," Dominic said, his gaze flicking to Lyra with undisguised surprise. "Then let them speak," Valen replied. An older woman stepped forward, her silver hair elaborately braided. "Alpha, this outsider, laid hands upon you without permission of the Council. Such an offense. Would you rather I had perished, Elder Karina?" Valen interrupted, his voice deceptively soft. The woman faltered. "Of course not, Alpha, but protocols exist for a reason. The healer should have been vetted, her loyalty assured. Instead, she was brought directly into your presence while you were vulnerable. And yet," Valen rose slowly to his feet, his height and power suddenly filling the room despite his weakened state. "Here I stand, healed by the hands you would now punish. The law is clear," another council member insisted. "Outsiders who touch the Alpha without consent of the Council face death." Lyra's blood turned to ice. Death? For saving him? She took an instinctive step backward. "The law," Valen said, his voice deadly quiet, "is mine to interpret, mine to enforce, mine to change." He crossed the room until he stood before the Council, towering over even the tallest among them. "This healer has done what none of you could. She approached me without fear when your own healers cowered." "Alpha, please," Elder Karina said. "Consider what this means. An outsider, untested, unknown. Her name," Valen cut in, "is Lyra, and she has proven her worth more thoroughly than any among you." He turned, his golden eyes finding Lyra's. "Come here." Heart pounding, Lyra approached. To her shock, Valen took her hand, his much larger one engulfing hers. "The one who faced me without fear," he declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "will stand beside me without shame." Confused murmurs rippled through the Council. Dominic stepped forward, his expression carefully controlled. "Alpha, what are you saying?" Valen's grip tightened around Lyra's hand. "I have found my Luna." The room erupted into chaos. Council members shouting over one another, guards shifting uncomfortably, Elias and Kira exchanging shocked glances. Through it all, Valen stood immovable, his hand still holding Lyra's, his eyes never leaving the stunned faces of his council. And Lyra, caught in the center of a storm she never sought, could only wonder what terrible new fate she had healed herself into. The council chamber fell silent as Lyra entered. 12 pairs of eyes tracked her movement, their expressions ranging from calculated assessment to undisguised hostility. The morning sun streamed through high windows, casting long fingers of light across the polished stone table where the elders sat in judgment. Not of her, technically, of Valen's declaration. "This is unprecedented," Elder Karina was saying, her voice crisp with disapproval. "An Alpha Luna must come from strong bloodlines, must understand pack politics and traditions, must have proven loyalty." Lyra kept her gaze forward, hands clasped tightly before her. She had been given clothes befitting her sudden new station, a deep blue dress with silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. It felt foreign against her skin, too fine, too restricting. "Unprecedented?" Valen's voice was dangerously soft. He sat at the head of the table, still pale from his ordeal, but radiating power nonetheless. "Need I remind the Council that I am the 23rd Alpha of the Northern Mountains, and that 19 of my predecessors took Lunas from outside their original packs?" "From allied packs, yes," another elder countered. "Not from where?" Valen challenged. "Say it, Elder Merrick." The older man's jaw tightened. "Not from exiles with no pack allegiance." "My allegiance," Lyra said, surprising herself and everyone in the room, "is to healing, to easing suffering wherever I find it. That was true before my exile, and it remains true now. And that is precisely why you were cast out," Elder Karina snapped. "A pack healer's first duty is to the pack. Always. Your Indiscriminate compassion is a liability. Is it? Dominic spoke for the first time, his scarred face thoughtful. The Alpha lies before us, healed, when our own refuse to approach him. I would call that an asset. Murmurs rippled through the council. Lyra cast a surprised glance at the second, who had thus far seemed the most skeptical of Valen's pronouncement. Furthermore, Dominic continued, we face unprecedented hostility from the southern packs. The attack on our Alpha was not random. It was coordinated, targeted, an alliance between the Redclaw and Silverthorn packs, if our scouts are correct. All the more reason to have a Luna of strong political standing, Elder Merrick argued. Someone who might help forge counter-alliances. And who would you suggest? Valen asked, his tone almost conversational, though Lyra noted how his fingers had tightened on the armrests of his chair. Your daughter, perhaps? Or Elder Karina's niece? Both of whom have been paraded before me at every seasonal gathering for the past 3 years. The elder's face flushed. They are qualified. They are terrified of me, Valen cut in, as is every unmated female in the territory. Except, his gaze shifted to Lyra. One. Silence fell over the council chamber. Lyra felt the weight of expectation pressing down upon her, suffocating in its intensity. May I speak freely? She asked. Valen nodded, something like curiosity flickering in his golden eyes. I did not ask for this position, Lyra began, her voice steadier than she felt. I was brought here to heal, not to lead. And while I am honored by the Alpha's declaration, I believe we should discuss what this truly means. Explain, Valen said, leaning forward slightly. You declared me Luna in a moment of high emotion, after being healed from a near-fatal injury. Perhaps in gratitude, or perhaps, she met his gaze directly, to thwart a council you knew would demand my execution. Sharp intakes of breath sounded around the table. No one challenged an Alpha's decision so directly, not if they wished to keep breathing. But Valen simply tilted his head, studying her with those piercing eyes. You believe I acted impulsively. I believe you acted protectively, Lyra corrected. Whether toward me or your own authority, I cannot say, but a true Luna should be chosen with careful consideration, not as a reaction to council politics. Wise counsel, Dominic murmured, sounding almost impressed. Valen rose to his feet, and everyone in the chamber instinctively straightened. He circled the table slowly, his movements measured, predatory. When he reached Lyra, he stopped. Walk with me, he said, not a request, but a command. Lyra followed him from the council chamber, aware of the eyes burning into her back. They walked in silence through the fortress corridors, past guards who bowed deeply and pack members who pressed themselves against walls to make way. They fear you, Lyra observed quietly. As they should. Does that not grow lonely? Being surrounded by fear? Valen cast her a sidelong glance. Fear ensures order. Order ensures survival. And is survival all you seek for your pack? They had reached a massive wooden door reinforced with iron. Valen pushed it open, revealing a small courtyard garden enclosed by the mountain walls. Despite the fortress's imposing exterior, this space was unexpectedly beautiful. Wildflowers bloomed in carefully tended beds, and a small stream bubbled over rocks before disappearing into the stone. My mother created this place, Valen said, his voice softer than Lyra had yet heard it. She believed beauty was as necessary as strength. Lyra stepped into the garden, feeling some of her tension ease as the scent of lavender and wild roses enveloped her. You are right, Valen continued, watching her. I declared you Luna impulsively, but not without reason. Because I approached you without fear? A faint smile touched his lips. Because you approached me with truth. Do you know how rarely I hear it? Everyone tells me what they think I wish to hear. Everyone except you. Lyra traced her fingers along a delicate blue flower. Truth is the foundation of healing. Lies help no one, least of all the injured. Precisely. Valen moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. The council would have me mate with someone who would never challenge me, never guide me. A pretty ornament to produce heirs and nod agreement to my every word. And you don't want that? His laugh was startling in its genuine amusement. What Alpha would? I need strength beside me, not subservience. Eyes that see what mine cannot. Hands that heal what I would destroy in my rage. You speak of balance, Lyra said, understanding dawning. I speak of you. His gaze was intense, searching. I meant what I said before the council. You approached me without fear when my own healers fled. You told me truths no one else dared speak. You saved my life with knowledge my pack has forgotten. That doesn't make me qualified to be Luna. No, he agreed, but it makes you worthy of consideration. And I am offering you that consideration now, formally, and with clear mind. Lyra stared at him, shocked by the implication. You're courting me? I am offering you a choice, Valen corrected. Remain here for 1 moon. Learn our ways, our challenges. At the end of that time, if you wish to leave, you may do so with my protection and resources enough to establish yourself wherever you wish. And if I stay? His expression grew serious. Then you will become my Luna in truth, bound by all the ancient rites with all the power and responsibility that entails. Lyra looked away, her mind racing. 1 moon to decide whether to tie herself to this dangerous, complicated alpha, to a pack that largely viewed her with suspicion, to a position she had never sought or prepared for. Why? She asked finally. Why offer this choice at all? You could simply command me to stay or go. Because a Luna chosen is stronger than a Luna commanded, he said simply. And because the choice itself reveals character. Before she could respond, a commotion sounded from the corridor beyond. A guard appeared at the doorway, his expression urgent. Alpha, forgive the interruption. Scouts have returned from the southern border. The Red Claw forces have withdrawn, but... Valen prompted, his voice hardening. They've left something behind. In the clearing where you were attacked. Valen's jaw tightened. What? The guard hesitated. Bodies, Alpha. 3 of them. Pack members from the eastern settlements. Children. Lyra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Something terrible and ancient flashed across Valen's face. A rage so profound it transformed his features into something barely human. His eyes flared gold, and the air around him seemed to darken. Bring Dominic to me, he commanded, his voice a low, lethal growl. Prepare 20 of our strongest fighters. We move within the hour. The guard bowed deeply and departed. Valen turned to Lyra, and for a moment she glimpsed the monster that had earned him his fearsome reputation. This, he said, is what I face. What my pack faces. Enemies who would slaughter children to provoke my rage, to lure me into traps like the one that nearly succeeded. And you're going to give them exactly what they want, Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. Valen's eyes narrowed. They have murdered pack children. There must be a response. Yes, she agreed, but a calculated one, not a blind charge into what may well be another ambush. You would have me appear weak, allow the murder of innocents to go unanswered? Lyra straightened, meeting his fierce gaze. I would have you appear wise. Send a smaller team to recover the bodies with honor. Gather intelligence before you commit your forces. The children are already dead. A few hours' delay in your vengeance will not harm them further. For a long, tense moment, Valen stared at her, the rage in his eyes undiminished. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. You would counsel patience, he said. Not quite a question. I would counsel strategy, Lyra corrected. Rage makes for poor decisions, and poor decisions cost lives. Valen was silent for several heartbeats, his internal struggle visible in the tension of his powerful frame. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. Dominic, he called, and Lyra realized the second had arrived at the doorway. Change of plans. Send a recovery team, heavily guarded. Full honors for the fallen, and double the scouts along the southern border. I want to know exactly what forces gather there before we strike. Yes, Alpha, Dominic replied, his expression betraying momentary surprise before he departed to carry out the commands. When they were alone again, Valen turned to Lyra, his expression unreadable. Your counsel, he said quietly, may have just saved the lives of 20 wolves, or it may have emboldened our enemies, she countered. We won't know until events unfold. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Honesty again, even when it does not serve you. The truth always serves in the end. Valen studied her for a long moment. You've made your first decision as Luna, he said finally. Let us see how it plays out. I haven't accepted the position, Lyra reminded him. Not officially, he agreed. And yet you just said our enemies, not your enemies. Lyra opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, realizing he was right. Somewhere in the last few minutes, she had begun thinking of the pack's problems as her own. "One moon," Valen said, his voice softening slightly. "To learn each other. To decide." Before she could respond, a new commotion arose from within the fortress. Shouting voices, running feet. A different guard appeared, this one pale and visibly shaking. "Alpha," he gasped. "A messenger from the eastern settlement. Elder Thorn has arrived, demanding to speak with you. He claims the healer Lyra is his property, that she was not exiled but fled, stealing pack secrets." Lyra felt as though the ground had dropped from beneath her feet. Elder Thorn, the man who had cast her out, who had threatened to have her executed if she ever returned. What cruel twist of fate had brought him here now? Valen's expression darkened, his eyes shifting to her. "Is this true?" "No," Lyra said, finding her voice with effort. "I was formally exiled. The entire pack witnessed it. And these stolen secrets?" She shook her head. "The healing knowledge I possess was passed to me by my grandmother. The elders feared it because it came from the old ways, not their approved methods. But I stole nothing." Valen held her gaze for a long moment, as if searching for deception. Then he nodded once. Decision made. "Bring the elder to the main hall," he instructed the guard. "I will hear his accusations formally." As they made their way from the garden, Valen's hand settled at the small of Lyra's back, a gesture both protective and possessive. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her, at odds with the dread pooling in her stomach. "He will not touch you," Valen said quietly, as if sensing her fear. "Not while you are under my protection." Lyra wasn't certain whether to be comforted or terrified by the steel in his voice. She only knew that within the span of a single day, she had gone from isolated exile to the center of pack politics, alpha declarations, and now, accusations that could still see her killed. One moon suddenly seemed an eternity to survive. The great hall fell silent as they entered. Pack members lined the walls, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and unease. At the far end, standing before the Alpha's massive wooden throne, was Elder Thorn. He looked older than Lyra remembered, his once proud posture slightly stooped, his face more deeply lined. But his eyes, when they fixed on her, held the same cold disdain she remembered from the day of her exile. "Alpha Valen," he said, offering a bow that was just a fraction too shallow to be properly respectful. "I come seeking justice for a grave offense against my pack." Valen moved to his throne, his movements deliberate, unhurried. He seated himself with casual grace that nonetheless communicated absolute authority. "Speak your grievance, Elder," he said, his tone neutral but his eyes watchful. Thorn straightened, his gaze flickering to Lyra with undisguised hatred. "This woman," he said, pointing a gnarled finger at her, "was a healer in my pack. She abused her position, using sacred knowledge to aid rogues and enemies. When confronted with her crimes, she fled, taking with her secrets that have belonged to our healers for generations." Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Lyra felt the weight of their stares, the quick shift in their scent as suspicion bloomed. 3 moons ago," Thorn continued, his voice rising, "she disappeared in the night after being told she would face judgment for her actions. Now I find her here, having somehow insinuated herself into your household, Alpha. I can only imagine what untruth she has told you." "Interesting," Valen said, his voice deceptively mild. "You claim she fled to escape judgment, yet my understanding is that she was formally exiled. Which is it, Elder?" Thorn hesitated, clearly not expecting to be challenged so directly. "The formalities are not—" "The formalities," Valen interrupted, "are everything in matters of pack law. Was she exiled or not?" The Elder's face tightened. "Yes, she was exiled, after her crimes were discovered." "What specific crimes?" "She healed rogues," Thorn said, as if it were obvious. "Wolves with no pack loyalty, potential enemies." "I see." Valen leaned back slightly. "And these pack secrets she allegedly stole. Describe them." Again, Thorn seemed caught off guard. "Healing methods. Ancient knowledge passed only to those who have proven their loyalty." "Knowledge like how to counteract northern bitterroot poison?" Valen asked, his eyes glinting dangerously. The Elder paled slightly. "That, among other things." "Curious," Valen said, his voice dropping to a near whisper that nonetheless carried throughout the silent hall, "that you would mention that particular poison. The same one used in an attempt on my life just days ago." Gasps echoed through the hall. Thorn took an involuntary step backward. Alpha, I assure you, I had no knowledge. Oh, I believe you, Valen said, rising slowly to his feet. Just as I believe you had no knowledge that this healer you exiled would save my life with the very knowledge you claim she stole. He descended the steps from his throne, each movement measured, predatory. Let me be very clear, Elder Thorn. Lyra is under my protection. More than that, she is to be my Luna. The declaration, spoken publicly for the first time, sent shockwaves through the gathered wolves. Thorn's mouth fell open in stunned disbelief. This is impossible, he stammered. She is nothing. A cast-off. Choose your next words with exceptional care, Valen advised, now standing directly before the elder, towering over him. You stand in my territory, before my pack, insulting the woman I have chosen. Consider the consequences. Terror flashed across Thorn's face as he finally seemed to grasp the danger of his position. I meant no disrespect, Alpha. I was merely surprised. Your surprise is noted, Valen said coldly. Now, you have a choice. Withdraw your accusations and return to your territory, or press your claim and face me in the challenge circle. The blood drained from Thorn's face. Challenge an Alpha in his prime? It would be suicide. I withdraw my accusations, he said, his voice barely audible. The healer is yours. Not mine, Valen corrected, his tone softening as he glanced at Lyra. Her own, and currently my honored guest. She will decide her own fate when the moon is full. Confusion flashed across Thorn's features, but he was wise enough not to question further. He bowed, deeply this time. If that is all, Valen said, dismissal clear in his tone. There is one more matter, Thorn said hesitantly. The southern packs. They have been moving beyond their traditional hunting grounds, pressing northward. We have had incursions. And you come to me because? Because, Thorn said, looking distinctly uncomfortable. They fear you. Your territory has remained secure while others have suffered. We seek an alliance, protection, in exchange for loyalty. A ripple of surprised murmurs swept through the hall. Valen's expression remained impassive, but Lyra caught the slight narrowing of his eyes. Calculation, assessment, an interesting proposal, he said finally, one that requires consideration. You will remain as my guest tonight. We will discuss terms tomorrow. Thorn bowed again, relief evident in his posture. Thank you, Alpha. As guards escorted the elder away, Valen returned to Lyra's side. Are you all right? He asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. The question surprised her. Concern was not something she expected from the feared Alpha of the North. I'm processing, she admitted. He was the one who ordered my exile. To see him here, seeking your protection. Life offers strange ironies, Valen agreed, guiding her from the hall as the pack dispersed, conversations buzzing in their wake. But it also offers opportunities. For vengeance? Lyra asked, searching his face. For justice, he corrected. Which is not always the same thing. They walked in silence for several moments, through corridors now familiar to Lyra, after just a day in the fortress. Eventually, they reached a heavy wooden door she hadn't seen before. These will be your quarters, Valen said, pushing the door open to reveal a spacious chamber with a large bed, a sitting area before a fireplace, and tall windows overlooking the mountains. Until you make your decision, Lyra stepped inside, taking in the unexpected luxury. It's beautiful. My mother's rooms, Valen said quietly, untouched since her death 5 years ago. The significance of the gesture wasn't lost on Lyra. Thank you, she said, turning to face him, for defending me before Thorn, for offering me choice instead of command. Valen studied her, something unreadable in his golden eyes. Rest, he said finally. Tomorrow brings new challenges. The recovery team will return with the children's bodies. There will be a ceremony, and decisions to be made regarding Thorn's request for alliance. You believe his story? About the southern packs? I believe there is truth in it, Valen said carefully, though perhaps not the whole truth. The timing of his arrival, so soon after the attempt on my life, it bears consideration. You think he might be involved? I think, Valen said, that nothing in pack politics happens by chance, least of all an elder arriving to reclaim an exiled healer on the very day she is declared future Luna. The implication sent a chill through Lyra. Was she merely a pawn in some larger game between packs? A bargaining chip Thorn hoped to reclaim? Don't, Valen said softly, reading her expression. Don't doubt yourself or your place here. Whatever brought you to my doorstep, fate, coincidence, or machination, you have earned your position through your own courage and skill. The unexpected reassurance warmed something within Lyra. She offered him a small smile. Thank you. Valen nodded once, then turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. One question, if I may. Of course. The children you healed. The rogues. Why? Knowing it would anger your pack, risk your position. Why help those who offered you nothing in return? Lyra considered the question carefully. Because pain doesn't distinguish between worthy and unworthy victims. Because suffering isn't lessened by pack status or political alliance. Because healing is not a privilege to be earned, but a right of all living creatures. Valen was silent for a long moment. Then, you will make a remarkable Luna, he said quietly, if you choose to stay. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Lyra alone with her thoughts, her doubts, and the growing realization that her life had irrevocably changed. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. As night fell over the mountain fortress, Lyra stood at her window, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. One moon to decide her fate. One moon to understand the complex, dangerous Alpha who had declared her his Luna. One moon to determine whether she could truly belong in a world of pack politics and power struggles. And somewhere in the southern territories, enemies gathered, plotting their next move against the shadow of the North Mountains, and now perhaps against her as well. Autumn deepened in the northern mountains as Lyra's first moon in Valen's fortress neared its end. Golden light bathed the ancient stone walls each morning, shadows lengthening as days grew shorter and nights colder. 3 weeks of ceremonies, council meetings, and increasingly bold southern pack incursions had transformed Lyra from wary exile to de facto Luna, though she had yet to give Valen her final answer. In these weeks, she had found unexpected purpose among people who had initially viewed her with suspicion. The pack's children now smiled when she passed, having heard tales of her healing the fearsome Alpha when none else dared. Even some council members had begun seeking her advice on matters beyond healing, a development that both surprised and pleased her, though Elder Karina remained coldly disapproving of her presence. Dawnlight warmed her quarters as she ground herbs in a stone mortar, seeking solace in the familiar ritual. The scent of dried lavender and sage filled the air, comforting in its familiarity. These quiet morning hours had become her sanctuary, the only time she truly felt like herself amidst the whirlwind of her new life. A knock at the door broke her concentration. "Enter," she called, setting aside her work. Kira appeared, her expression grave. In the weeks since Lyra's arrival, the female wolf had become something of an ally. Not quite a friend, but a steady presence who seemed genuinely invested in Lyra's successful integration. "The Alpha requests your presence," Kira said. "The recovery team has found something in the southern forests." Lyra rose, brushing herb dust from her hands. "More bodies?" "No," Kira replied, her voice dropping. "Survivors, children, hidden in an abandoned den." Lyra's heart clenched. "Are they injured?" "Physically, no. But they're refusing to speak, refusing to eat. The Alpha believes your healing skills might help where others have failed." They walked swiftly through the fortress corridors, which had gradually become more familiar to Lyra. Pack members they passed nodded respectfully, a marked change from the suspicious glares of her first days. The story of how she had healed Valen from certain death had spread, embellished with each telling until it sounded more legend than reality. Valen awaited them in a small chamber adjacent to the healing rooms. He stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him, staring out a narrow window. The morning light caught the silver threads in his black hair, giving him an almost ethereal appearance despite his imposing physique. "Alpha," Kira announced. "I've brought Lyra as requested." Valen turned, his golden eyes finding Lyra's immediately. Something in his expression shifted, softened briefly before returning to its usual careful neutrality. "Thank you, Kira. Leave us." When they were alone, Valen approached Lyra, stopping closer than protocol strictly dictated. Over the past weeks, Lyra had noticed this tendency, the way he seemed drawn into her space, always standing nearer than necessary, his scent mingling with hers in a way that sent confusing signals through her body. "The children?" she prompted. 3 of them, Valen said, his voice low, found hiding in a cave network near the Silverthorn border. They appear to be from different packs. Their scents don't match each other or any territory we recognize. Orphans? Possibly. Or deliberately separated from their packs. They won't speak, won't shift forms. They just watch, with eyes that have seen too much. The pain in his voice surprised Lyra. Despite his fearsome reputation, she had discovered that Valen harbored a particular softness for the youngest members of his pack. He visited the nurseries weekly, knew every child by name, ensured they received the best education and training. "You believe I can help them," she said, not quite a question. "I believe they need someone who understands what it means to be rootless, to be separated from all that is familiar." His gaze was intense, searching. "Someone who heals more than physical wounds." Lyra nodded slowly. "I'll try. There's something else," Valen added, hesitation evident in his tone. "One of the children had this." He withdrew a small object from his pocket, a carved wooden pendant on a leather cord. The symbol etched into it made Lyra's breath catch. A crescent moon with 3 stars above it. "You recognize it," Valen observed. "It's the symbol of the Moonwalkers," Lyra said softly. "An ancient order of healers who served no single pack. They traveled between territories, offering aid to any who needed it. They were said to have been wiped out decades ago. By whom? The southern packs, primarily. They feared the Moonwalkers' independence, their refusal to bend to any alpha's will. More importantly, they feared the knowledge the healers carried. Old magic, deeper and more powerful than the watered-down rituals most pack healers practice today." Valen's eyes narrowed. "Knowledge like healing northern bitterroot poisoning." "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "My grandmother was one of the last. She passed her knowledge to me in secret, knowing the danger it posed." Understanding dawned in Valen's eyes. "You weren't just healing rogues. You were teaching them." Lyra met his gaze steadily. "I was continuing my grandmother's work, preserving knowledge that would otherwise die." For a long moment Valen studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his severe features into something almost boyish. "You continue to surprise me, Lyra." Before she could respond, he held out the pendant. "Take this to the children. Perhaps it will help them trust you." The healing rooms were quiet when Lyra entered. 3 small figures huddled together on a single bed despite there being 3 prepared for them. They watched her with wary eyes. 2 boys and a girl, none older than 10 years by Lyra's estimation. The smallest boy, with tawny hair and hollow cheeks, pressed closer to the girl, who appeared to be the oldest. "Hello," she said softly, keeping her distance. "My name is Lyra." None of the children responded. The oldest child, the girl, watched Lyra with keen intelligence, her dark eyes missing nothing. "I'm a healer," Lyra continued, sitting cross-legged on the floor to make herself less threatening. "I understand you've been through something frightening. You don't need to talk about it if you don't want to." Still silence. The girl's gaze remained fixed on Lyra, assessing, calculating. "I thought you might be hungry," Lyra said, withdrawing some bread and dried fruit from the pouch at her belt. She set it on the floor between them, then slid it forward with her foot. "It's not much, but it's a start." When none of the children moved toward the food, Lyra took a different approach. She withdrew the pendant Valen had given her, letting it dangle from her fingers where the morning light caught it. "Do you know what this means?" she asked. The effect was immediate. The girl's eyes widened, and the smallest boy let out a tiny gasp. "Moonwalker," the girl whispered, the first word any of them had spoken. "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "My grandmother was one of the last. She taught me their ways." Slowly, cautiously, the girl slid from the bed. She approached Lyra, stopping just out of reach, her eyes never leaving the pendant. "They said the Moonwalkers were all gone," she said, her voice scratchy from disuse. "Nearly," Lyra agreed, "but not entirely." The girl studied her for a long moment. "Can you prove it?" Lyra considered the challenge. Then, closing her eyes, she began to sing, a low, melodic chant in the ancient language of the wolf packs. The healing song was one of the first her grandmother had taught her, a prayer for protection and strength. As she sang, something shifted in the air of the small room. A warmth spread from Lyra's center outward, filling the space with a gentle golden light that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. It danced across the children's faces, casting them in a glow that softened the fear in their eyes. When she opened her eyes, all 3 children were staring at her in wonder. The pendant in her hand glowed faintly, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "You really are one," the girl whispered, awe replacing suspicion. "A true moonwalker." "I try to honor their legacy," Lyra said. "Now, will you tell me your names? I promise you're safe here." The girl hesitated, then nodded. "I'm Sarah. This is Eli." She gestured to the smallest boy. "And that's Ren." "Hello, Sarah. Eli, Ren," Lyra said, smiling gently. "I'm very glad to meet you. Would you like to tell me what happened? How you came to be in that cave?" Sarah's expression darkened. "They took us, from different packs. Said we were special, that we had the old blood." "Who took you?" "Wolves with marks on their faces," Eli said suddenly, his small voice trembling. "Like claw marks, but made with paint." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "What did they want with you?" "They made us drink things," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Potions that made us see things, feel things. They asked if we could hear the moon speaking, if we could feel the earth moving. Testing for signs of the old magic," Lyra realized aloud. Her grandmother had told her of such tests, ways to identify those with natural healing abilities, the rare few who could channel the earth's energy without training. "They said we were failures," Ren spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly steady, "that we didn't have enough of the blood. They were going to try a different approach. That's when we ran." Lyra's heart ached for them. Children, experimented on, then discarded when they didn't show the results their captors wanted. "Do you know what they were truly seeking?" she asked carefully. Sarah nodded solemnly. "The heart of the moon. They said it was hidden generations ago, that only one with the old blood could find it. The heart of the moon." Lyra had thought it merely legend, a powerful artifact said to amplify a healer's abilities tenfold. With it, the stories claimed, one could not only heal, but transform, bring life where there was none, command the very elements. Did they say why they wanted it? "Power," Sarah said simply. The leader, they called him the Blood Moon Alpha, said with it, he could unite all the packs under his rule, that the time of divided territories was ending. Before Lyra could ask more, the door opened, revealing Valen. The children immediately tensed, shrinking back. "It's all right," Lyra assured them. "This is Alpha Valen. He's the one who sent teams to find you, to bring you to safety." Valen, seeming to sense the children's fear, remained by the door, his posture deliberately non-threatening. "How are they?" he asked Lyra. "Brave," she replied, with a reassuring smile at the 3, "and full of important information. We should speak privately." Rising, she turned to the children. "I'll return soon. Please, try to eat something. You'll need your strength." Sarah nodded, her eyes still fixed warily on Valen. "Will you come back? Really?" "I promise," Lyra said, reaching out to touch the girl's hand lightly. "You're safe here." Outside in the corridor, Valen raised an eyebrow. "You got them to speak. Impressive." "The pendant helped," Lyra admitted, "and I showed them a demonstration of the Moonwalker abilities." Valen's gaze sharpened. "Magic, healing energy," Lyra corrected. "The ancient ways." "And what did they tell you?" Lyra glanced around the corridor, aware of guards stationed within earshot. "Not here, somewhere private." Valen led her to his study, a room Lyra had come to know well over the past weeks. They had spent many evenings there, discussing pack matters, sharing meals, gradually learning each other's minds. It was the one place in the fortress where Valen seemed most at ease. The weight of his alpha responsibilities temporarily lightened. "They were taken because someone believed they carried the old blood," Lyra explained, settling into what had become her chair by the fire. "They were tested for signs of healing magic and discarded when they showed none." Valen's expression darkened. "Who?" "A group led by someone called the Blood Moon Alpha. They bear painted claw marks on their faces." "Cultists," Valen growled, pacing before the fire. "There have been whispers of such a group forming in the southern territories. Wolves who believe in the return of ancient ways, ancient powers, but to kidnap children. They seek an artifact," Lyra continued, "the heart of the moon. It's said to amplify a healer's powers exponentially, and if found by someone with ill intent, it could be devastating," Lyra admitted. "The old stories say it can heal, or harm, that in the wrong hands, it could drain the life from entire territories. Valen stopped pacing, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight. And you believe these stories? I believe there is usually truth at the core of legend, Lyra said carefully. Whether the heart is as powerful as the tales claim, I cannot say. But I believe those seeking it believe in its power, and that makes them dangerous. Elder Thorn, Valen said suddenly. He arrived here speaking of southern incursions, seeking alliance. Yet he also came for you, a healer trained in the old ways. You think he's connected to these blood moon cultists? I think, Valen said, his voice hardening, that there are too many coincidences. The attempt on my life with Northern Bitterroot, the murdered children left as bait, Thorn's sudden appearance, and now, these survivors with tales of wolves seeking ancient healing magic. Lyra felt cold dread pooling in her stomach. If Thorn is involved, then he is not here seeking alliance but information, perhaps even recruitment. Valen's expression was grim. And you, with your Moonwalker heritage, would be a valuable asset to their cause. Or a threat, Lyra pointed out, if I refuse to aid them. Which you would, Valen said with certainty. Yes, she agreed. Healing is meant to preserve life, not destroy it. Valen studied her for a long moment, his expression softening. You've upheld that belief even at great personal cost. As have you, Lyra said quietly. You could have charged blindly to avenge those murdered children. Instead, you chose patience, strategy. Lives were saved because of it. Something shifted in Valen's eyes, a vulnerability Lyra had glimpsed only in rare, unguarded moments over the past weeks. Your influence, he acknowledged. Your balance. The word hung between them, laden with meaning. Balance. What he had sought in Aluna. What he believed Lyra could bring to his rule. His life. The full moon is in 3 days, Valen said, changing the subject abruptly. Have you made your decision? The question caught Lyra off guard, though she had known it was coming. 1 moon to decide whether to accept the position of Luna, a moon that was nearly complete. She began, then faltered. How could she possibly decide now, with this new threat emerging, with children in danger and cultists seeking ancient power? I understand your hesitation, Valen said, mistaking her silence for reluctance. This is not the life you sought. It's not that, Lyra said quickly. It's just complicated. Explain. Lyra rose, moving to stand before the fire. These past weeks I've come to care for your pack, to feel responsible for them. The thought of leaving now, with this threat looming. You would stay out of duty then? Valen asked, his tone carefully neutral. Not choice? No, Lyra turned to face him. Not merely duty. I've come to care for more than just the pack. The admission cost her, vulnerable as it made her. But it was true. Over the weeks of working alongside Valen, seeing his dedication to his people, his fierce protection of the vulnerable, his willingness to consider her counsel even when it contradicted his instincts, she had developed feelings she couldn't quite name. Valen stepped closer, his expression intent. What are you saying, Lyra? I'm saying that A commotion in the corridor interrupted them. Running feet, shouted commands. The door burst open, revealing Dominic, his face grave. Alpha, forgive the intrusion. Elder Thorn is gone, and he's taken the children with him. The fortress erupted into chaos. Guards were dispatched, tracking teams assembled. Valen stood in the center of the great hall, issuing commands with deadly calm that belied the rage Lyra sensed simmering beneath the surface. They can't have gone far, Dominic was saying. The guards at the eastern gate reported seeing the elder leading 3 small figures less than an hour ago. They assumed they had permission to leave. They assumed, Valen repeated, his voice dangerously soft. 4 lives endangered because of assumptions. Alpha, Kira spoke up. The children's scents are still fresh. Our best trackers could— No, Lyra interrupted, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her, many widening in surprise at her boldness. Tracking teams would be detected. Whatever Thorn's involvement with this blood moon cult, he'll be expecting pursuit. What do you suggest? Valen asked, his tone making it clear that her opinion carried weight. Lyra took a deep breath. Let me go after them. Alone. Shocked murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Valen's expression darkened. Absolutely not. Listen, Lyra insisted. Thorn believes I'm ignorant of his true purpose. He'll be expecting armed pursuit, not a lone healer. I can move quietly, track them to wherever they're meeting these cultists. And when you find them? Valen demanded. What then? You would face them alone, unarmed? I'm not helpless, Lyra countered. The Moonwalker arts include more than healing. Valen's eyes narrowed. You've been holding back. Certain abilities require trust before they're shared, Lyra said carefully. But I can defend myself. And more importantly, I can protect the children. It's too dangerous, Valen insisted, turning away as if the matter was settled. Alpha, Dominic interjected, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps a compromise. Lyra follows their trail, stays hidden, locates their destination. Meanwhile, our forces follow at a distance, ready to strike when she signals. Valen was silent for a long moment, his internal struggle visible in the tension of his powerful frame. Finally, he turned back to Lyra. You would risk yourself for these children? Children not of your pack, whom you've just met? Yes, Lyra said without hesitation, just as I would heal rogues and strays. Because it's right. Something shifted in Valen's expression. A softening, a surrender. Very well, but not alone. I will accompany you. Protests immediately erupted from the council and guards. Alpha, you cannot. The risk is too great. If something were to happen to you. Valen silenced them with a raised hand. My decision is made. Dominic will lead the main force, following at a distance. Lyra and I will track Thorn and the children. And Elder Thorn? Dominic asked. When we find him? Valen's expression hardened. He has betrayed my hospitality, endangered children under my protection, and likely conspired in an attempt on my life. What do you think? The question required no answer. Dominic nodded grimly. Prepare, Valen commanded. We leave within the hour. As the hall emptied, Valen drew Lyra aside, his expression intense. Are you certain about this? Once we leave these walls, I cannot guarantee your safety. I'm certain, Lyra replied. Those children trusted me. I won't abandon them. And these Moonwalker abilities you mentioned? What exactly have you been concealing? Lyra hesitated. Then, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard, she lowered her voice. The old magic allows connection to the natural world. I can influence certain elements, water, mostly, and I can sense life forces, track them over considerable distances. Useful skills, Valen observed. Why keep them secret? Such abilities have gotten healers killed in the past, Lyra said simply. Wolves fear what they don't understand. Yet you trust me with this knowledge now. Yes, Lyra said, meeting his gaze steadily. I do. Something passed between them then. A recognition, an understanding deeper than words. For the first time, Lyra felt the faint stirring of the mate bond her grandmother had once described to her. Not the immediate, overwhelming connection of fated mates in the stories, but something subtler, a thread being woven between their spirits, strengthening with each shared moment, each act of trust. We should prepare, Valen said finally, his voice rougher than usual. The trail grows colder by the minute. They traveled swiftly through the forest, following the increasingly faint scent trail Thorn and the children had left. Lyra moved with surprising grace for a healer, her steps nearly as silent as Valen's. They had spoken little since leaving the fortress, both focused on the urgency of their mission. As dusk approached, Lyra paused at a small stream, kneeling to examine disturbed earth at the water's edge. They crossed here, she said. Recently. Valen surveyed the area, his senses heightened. How can you tell? I detect no scent. In response, Lyra placed her palm flat against the damp soil. She closed her eyes, and Valen watched in fascination as a faint silver glow emanated from beneath her hand. 4 sets of footprints, she murmured. 1 larger, Thorn. 3 small, the children. They crossed less than 2 hours ago. The old magic, Valen said quietly. Lyra opened her eyes, the glow fading. A small part of it. The earth remembers those who walk upon it. If you know how to listen, and you can track them this way, even without scent? She nodded. As long as they remain in contact with natural elements. If they enter a structure or vehicle, the connection would be lost. Then let us continue while we can, Valen said, offering his hand to help her rise. The gesture was unexpected, unnecessary for a wolf of her strength. Yet Lyra found herself accepting it, her smaller hand enveloped in his larger one, The contact sent a jolt of warmth through her that had nothing to do with healing magic. They continued through the deepening twilight, the forest growing denser around them. Eventually, they reached a clearing where Lyra once again paused, her expression troubled. "Something's changed," she said, her brow furrowing. "The children's energy signatures. They're agitated, afraid." Valen's nostrils flared. "I detect unfamiliar scents. At least 5 different wolves have passed through here recently. They've met others," Lyra concluded. "The cultists, most likely. Can you still track them?" Lyra knelt, placing both palms against the earth. For several long moments, she remained motionless, her breathing slowing, her consciousness reaching outward through the connection only she could feel. Then her eyes snapped open, alarm clear in their depths. "They're heading for the ancient stones," she said, a note of dread in her voice. Valen's expression darkened. "You're certain?" The ancient stones, a circle of massive boulders deep within the forest, said to be a place of power where the boundary between worlds grew thin during certain lunar phases. Like the full moon, 3 days away. "We need to hurry," Lyra said, rising quickly. If they reach the stones by the full moon, she didn't need to finish the thought. Whatever ritual the Blood Moon cultists had planned, it couldn't be good. They moved faster now, sacrificing stealth for speed. The forest had grown completely dark, but both could see clearly with their wolf vision. Lyra led the way, following the energy trail only she could perceive. "Tell me about these cultists," Valen said as they ran. "What do you know of their beliefs?" "Only stories," Lyra replied. "They believe the ancient ways were abandoned too quickly, that wolves have forgotten their true power in exchange for civilization and comfort." "There's some truth in that," Valen admitted. "Perhaps, but they seek to reclaim that power through blood sacrifice and coercion. That was never the way of the old magic. It requires balance, harmony with the natural world, not dominance over it." They fell silent as they approached a steep ridge. Below, a faint glow could be seen through the trees. Firelight. Valen signaled for caution, and they crept forward until they reached a vantage point overlooking a small valley. What they saw made Lyra's blood run cold. A large encampment spread before them. Dozens of wolves moved about between tents and fire pits, all bearing the distinctive claw-mark paint on their faces. In the center of the camp stood a crude wooden structure, half cage, half altar, and within it, 3 small figures huddled together. "The children," Lyra whispered, her heart clenching. Beside her, Valen's body had gone rigid, a low growl building in his chest. "Wait," she cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. "We're outnumbered, and look." She pointed to a large tent set apart from the others. "That must be their leaders." "The Blood Moon Alpha," Valen muttered. "We need to signal Dominic and the others," Lyra said. "But first, I want to try to get closer, learn what they're planning." Valen turned to her, his expression fierce. "It's too dangerous. We'll wait for our forces." "There isn't time," Lyra argued, pointing to the frantic activity below. "Look at the preparations they're making. Whatever ritual they're planning, it's happening soon. Not on the full moon. Tonight." Valen studied the camp, noting the ceremonial items being arranged around the central altar, the urgency in the cultists' movements. Reluctantly, he nodded. "You're right," he conceded. "But we go together." They worked their way down the ridge, using the darkness and undergrowth as cover. As they drew closer to the camp, snippets of conversation reached their ears. "Alignment is perfect tonight. The healer should have been here by now. Blood of the innocent will serve if necessary." Lyra's steps faltered at the last phrase. "Blood of the innocent. The children. They're going to sacrifice them," she whispered in horror. Valen's expression turned deadly. "Not while I breathe." They had reached the edge of the camp now, concealed behind a large supply tent. Guards patrolled the perimeter, but their attention was focused outward, not inward. "We need a distraction," Valen murmured. "Something to draw their attention away from the children." Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating. "There's a stream nearby. I can use it." "How?" Instead of answering, Lyra pressed her palms to the earth once more. The silver glow returned, stronger now, spreading from her hands into the ground below. She began to chant softly, words in the ancient language that seemed to resonate with the very air around them. At first, nothing happened. Then, A low, rumbling sound emerged from the forest beyond the camp. The rumbling grew louder, became a roar. Wolves in the camp looked up in confusion, then alarm, as water suddenly burst from between the trees. A flash flood where no rain had fallen. Chaos erupted. Cultists scrambled to save their supplies, their rituals forgotten as water swept through the lower end of the camp. Guards ran toward the commotion, shouting orders. "Now!" Valen said, and they darted forward, keeping to the shadows. They reached the wooden cage undetected. The children's eyes widened at the sight of them, hope replacing terror. "Stand back," Valen warned, then gripped the wooden bars. With a display of alpha strength that left Lyra momentarily breathless, he wrenched the bars apart, creating an opening large enough for the children to slip through. "Quickly," Lyra urged, gathering the smallest Eli into her arms. Sarah and Ren scrambled out, pressing close to her sides. What a touching scene. The voice behind them sent a chill down Lyra's spine. Slowly, she turned. Elder Thorn stood there, but he was transformed. Gone was the stooped, aging elder. In his place stood a wolf in his prime, back straight, eyes gleaming with fanatical light. The painted claw marks on his face seemed to glow in the firelight. "I knew you would come for them," Thorn said, smiling coldly. "Your compassion makes you so predictable, Lyra. It's your greatest weakness, and your lack of it is yours," Lyra replied, pushing the children behind her. Valen moved to stand at her side, his presence a tangible force. "You have betrayed my hospitality, Thorn. You have endangered children under my protection. For this, there is only one punishment." Thorn laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. "You think me afraid of you, Alpha? I serve a greater purpose now." "Your blood moon cult?" Valen sneered. "Playing at ancient rituals you don't understand?" "We understand more than you know," Thorn retorted. "The old ways are returning. The time of divided territories is ending. Soon, all packs will serve one Alpha, the Blood Moon Alpha." "And you believe this justifies the sacrifice of children?" Lyra demanded, disgust evident in her voice. "Sacrifices must be made for the greater good," Thorn said dismissively, "and they're merely the beginning. The ritual requires blood of increasing power. First the innocent, then the powerful, and finally," his gaze fixed on Lyra, "the magical." Understanding dawned. "You never wanted me back as your healer," Lyra said. "You wanted me for this ritual. Your Moonwalker blood makes you ideal," Thorn agreed. "The last piece we need to unlock the heart of the moon." "And the attack on me?" Valen demanded. "The Northern Bitterroot?" "A test," Thorn smiled, "to see if Lyra possessed the healing knowledge we suspected. You were never meant to die, Alpha. Not yet. Your blood will be required for the next phase." The casual admission of such calculated cruelty stoked Valen's rage. A low, menacing growl rumbled from his chest. "Enough talk," he snarled. "You will pay for your treachery." He lunged forward, faster than Lyra's eyes could track. But Thorn was prepared. He dodged aside with unexpected agility, then raised his hand. A whistle cut through the night air. Suddenly, they were surrounded. Cultists emerged from the shadows, golden eyes gleaming, teeth bared in anticipation. "You should have brought your army, Alpha," Thorn taunted. "Instead, you walked into our trap. Now you will witness the beginning of a new era." Valen shifted into a defensive stance, his body coiled with lethal tension. "Stay behind me," he murmured to Lyra and the children. "No," Lyra said firmly. "Together." She stepped forward to stand at his side once more. Drawing a deep breath, she began to chant. Not the simple healing song she had shared before, but something older, more primal. The air around her shimmered, and the silver glow that had surrounded her hands now enveloped her entire body. The cultists hesitated, expressions of uncertainty replacing bloodlust. "What is this?" Thorn demanded, a flicker of fear crossing his features. "The true old magic," Lyra replied, her voice resonating with power. "Not perverted by cruelty, but purified by compassion." The glow intensified, spreading outward from Lyra in concentric circles of silver light. Where it touched the cultists, they recoiled, some crying out as if in pain. "It burns!" one shouted, backing away. "It's the full moon magic!" another cried. "But how? The moon isn't full yet!" Lyra continued chanting, her voice growing stronger. Beside her, Valen stood transfixed, feeling the magic wash over him. Not burning, but warming, strengthening. Thorn's face contorted with rage. "Kill them!" he commanded. "Kill them all!" The cultists surged forward, but they moved sluggishly, as if fighting against an invisible current. Valen met them head-on, his alpha strength sending wolves flying with each powerful blow. Lyra maintained her chant, creating a barrier of energy around the children. When a cultist broke through Valen's defense and lunged toward her, she didn't flinch. Instead, she placed her palm against his chest. "Find peace," she whispered. The wolf collapsed instantly, not dead but deeply unconscious. The battle raged around them, but it was becoming clear that despite their numbers, the cultists were outmatched by the combination of Valen's strength and Lyra's magic. Wolves began to retreat, fleeing into the forest. Thorn, seeing his followers abandoning the fight, snarled in frustration. "Cowards! The Blood Moon Alpha will have your hearts for this. Your Blood Moon Alpha seems notably absent from this fight," Valen observed coldly, advancing on Thorn. Fear finally broke through Thorn's fanaticism. He turned to flee, but Valen was faster. In one fluid motion, he caught the elder by the throat, lifting him from the ground. "Wait!" Lyra called, hurrying forward. "We need him alive. He can lead us to their leader, to the heart of the moon." Valen's eyes, wild with battle rage, gradually focused on her face. With visible effort, he controlled his instinct to kill, instead, throwing Thorn to the ground and placing a heavy boot on his chest. "Protect the children," he ordered Lyra. "Dominic's forces should arrive soon." As if summoned by his words, wolf howls echoed through the forest, their reinforcements approaching. The remaining cultists scattered, disappearing into the darkness. "It's over," Lyra told the children, gathering them close. "You're safe now." Sarah looked up at her, eyes shining with exhausted tears. "You made the water come, and the light. The old magic," Lyra explained softly. "The true ways of the Moonwalkers." "Will you teach us?" Ren asked, his voice barely audible. The question caught Lyra off guard. "You want to learn?" "They tested us because they thought we might have the old blood," Sarah said. "What if they were right? What if we just needed a real teacher?" A strange emotion welled in Lyra's chest. Something like hope, like purpose. The Moonwalker traditions might not die with her after all. "If you truly wish to learn," she said carefully, "and if your families permit it, then yes, I would be honored to teach you." Later that night, in the relative safety of a temporary camp established by Dominic's forces, Valen found Lyra sitting alone by the fire. The children slept nearby, exhausted but unharmed. Thorn had been bound and placed under heavy guard. "You were magnificent," Valen said quietly, settling beside her. "I've never seen magic like that." "It's the old way," Lyra replied, staring into the flames. "Power drawn not from dominance but harmony. My grandmother always said true strength comes from balance, knowing when to fight and when to heal. Like the balance you bring to my rule," Valen observed. "My strength, your compassion." Lyra smiled softly. "Perhaps. The children asked to learn from you," Valen said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. I told them I would teach them, if their families agree." "You would stay then? Beyond the moon we agreed upon?" Lyra turned to look at him. "Are you asking as Alpha, concerned for your pack's well-being, or as Valen?" Something vulnerable flickered in his golden eyes. "Both. Always both. The pack is part of me, and I of it. But my question now is more personal." "The full moon is tomorrow night," Valen reminded her. "Have you made your decision?" Lyra gazed into the fire, considering everything that had happened since she was brought to his fortress. The fear, the challenges, but also the purpose she had found, the connection that had grown between them, unexpected yet undeniable. "I have," she said, turning to meet his golden eyes. "I will stay." Relief and something deeper flickered across Valen's face. He reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. "Not out of duty?" he asked, echoing their earlier conversation. "No," Lyra assured him. "Out of choice. My place is here now, with the pack, with you. And the children? You would make them your first students? If you approve. The knowledge of the Moonwalkers shouldn't die. These children have suffered for it already. They deserve to understand the power others sought to take from them." Valen nodded slowly. "A new beginning, then. For them. For us." His voice dropped on the last words, and Lyra felt the shift in the air between them. the subtle tightening of the thread that had been weaving them together these past weeks. For us, she echoed softly. Valen's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle for one so powerful. When I declared you Luna that first morning, it was impulse, an instinct I didn't fully understand. But now, Lyra prompted, her heart beating faster. Now I know it was right, he said simply. You faced what others feared. You brought healing where there was only destruction. You showed compassion where cruelty reigned. His thumb traced the curve of her cheek, sending warmth cascading through her. You brought balance to a world that had forgotten its meaning. Lyra leaned into his touch, a smile curving her lips. And you protected when others would have abandoned. You listened when others would have commanded. You changed when others would have remained rigid. We are stronger together, Valen murmured, leaning closer. Balance, Lyra agreed. When his lips met hers, the thread between them pulled tight, strengthening into something unbreakable. Not the overwhelming instant connection of fated mates from the stories, but something that had been earned through trust, respect, and shared purpose. A wolf howl rose in the distance, one of their scouts signaling the all clear. Dominic approached from the edge of the camp, his expression carefully neutral when he saw his alpha and future Luna. The perimeter is secure, he reported. We've captured 8 cultists in addition to Elder Thorn. They'll face pack judgment when we return. And Thorn? Valen asked, reluctantly pulling away from Lyra. Refusing to speak, Dominic said, but we found this in his possession. He held out a rolled parchment, ancient and yellowed with age. Valen took it, carefully unrolling the brittle document. A map, Lyra breathed, leaning closer to examine the faded markings. To the heart of the moon, I presume, Valen said grimly. The map showed familiar territories, the northern mountains, the southern forests, but also places long forgotten, marked with symbols Lyra recognized from her grandmother's teachings. The sacred caves, she said, pointing to a marking near the eastern border, and the River of Souls. These are places from the old stories, places of power. And this? Valen indicated a symbol at the center of the map, a perfect circle surrounded by 9 stars. The cradle of the moon, Lyra whispered, awe in her voice, where the heart is said to rest. Dominic shifted uncomfortably. Then these cultists have the map to power that could unite or destroy all packs, Valen finished. Power they were willing to sacrifice children to obtain. And Thorn mentioned a leader, Lyra added. The Blood Moon Alpha. He's still out there. Then our work isn't finished, Valen said, carefully rolling the map. Tomorrow we return to the fortress. The children must be reunited with their families. Thorn and his followers must face justice. And we... He paused, looking down at Lyra with unexpected tenderness. We have a mating ceremony to prepare for. And after that? She asked. After that, Valen replied, his expression hardening with resolve. We find this Blood Moon Alpha and end his threat permanently. Together, Lyra said, taking his hand once more. Together, Valen agreed. Under the waning moon, as Dominic's forces secured the captured cultists and the forest settled into silence, Alpha and Healer sat together by the firelight. The path ahead would not be easy. The Blood Moon Alpha remained at large, the heart of the moon undiscovered, the true extent of the cultists' reach unknown. But they would face these challenges together. Strength balanced by compassion, power tempered by healing. The children slept peacefully nearby, their faces relaxed for the first time since Lyra had met them. Soon they would return home, but they would carry with them the beginning of knowledge long suppressed, knowledge that might one day help bridge the divide between the old ways and the new. As the fire burned low, Valen drew Lyra against him, his arms encircling her protectively. She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the rise and fall of his breath. The elders used to say that true power comes not from conquering others, but from conquering oneself. Lyra murmured. That the most difficult battle is against our own nature. And have I conquered mine? Valen asked, his voice a low rumble beneath her ear. Lyra smiled, reaching up to touch his face. No, you've embraced it. The strength and the gentleness, the fierceness and the compassion. That's the true balance, not denying any part of yourself, but making all parts work in harmony. Valen caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Wisdom from the Moonwalkers? Wisdom from my grandmother, Lyra corrected, who would have liked you very much, I think. Would she approve of her granddaughter becoming Luna to the feared shadow of the North Mountains? She would approve of her granddaughter finding where she truly belongs, Lyra said softly, and who she belongs with. In the distance, a wolf howled, a single pure note that echoed through the forest. Another joined it, then another, until the night was filled with the ancient song of pack and belonging. And as the last embers of the fire faded to ash, Lyra knew with bone-deep certainty that her decision was right. She had been brought to Valen's fortress as a prisoner, declared Luna on impulse, given one moon to decide her fate. But somewhere in the weeks of learning each other, of facing danger together, of finding balance in their differences, choice had replaced chance. She had cared for the alpha no one dared approach, and in doing so, had found not just a pack and a purpose, but a love that bridged worlds old and new, a love as ancient and enduring as the magic that flowed through her veins. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.